Hello friends. So this is our third lecture on Indigo. Now we have seen Gandhiji has come, Rajkumar Shukla, and his tenacity, the ability to hold on, that's the thing, the ability to persevere, the ability to persevere in one thing with wholehearted desire, or what is single-mindedness. This is what every student must have. Student life, you should pursue your studies single-minded. Don't allow any other thing to distract you. Understand? So now Gandhiji is in Rajendra Prasad's house. Then in Patna, you found that untouchability still pervades there. And then what Gandhiji thought was this, and Rajendra Prasad was not there. He was out of town. Now, as usual, our method, to follow our method, we will explain the words. Here you have got en route. En route means on the way. En route to Delhi, you can get down at Agra. On the way to Delhi, you can get down at Agra. Impart. Impart means to give. We must impart good education to all the children. Imparting good education, quality education to all the children is our duty. So that is impart means to give. Harbor. Harbor, the function of harbor is to protect. So in this case, harboring means to giving shelter, or you can say giving a place to live and also protecting a secure place. So one of the professors in his home harbored Gandhiji and his friends. Harbored means gave him protection, gave him shelter. And then advocates of home rule. Home rule means independence. Ruled by us. Advocates means supporters. Those who not advocate means the advocates who are appearing in the courts, they are also advocates. But in this case it means supporters. Supporters of home rule. There are many advocates of home rule during the time of independence struggle in every state. So all the supporters of home rule, they supported the struggle for our independence. Advent means come. See, December 1st to 25th is called the Advent season. Season of Advent means coming of Jesus Christ. That way. So Advent means coming. When we heard that Gandhiji, when we heard of the advent of Gandhiji to our town, all the people ran to meet him. Advent is coming. Then to brief him. Brief him is to give information briefly. So give information briefly. When the principal came to our class, we briefed him of our grievances. Grievances means our complaints also. We briefed him. Means we gave him a brief information about the problems faced by us in our class. And to brief him, chided the lawyers. Chided means angry, use angry words. Very often when students talk in the class, teachers chide them. Chide them. That means teachers say bad, means angry words, or at least look at them angrily. Chide them. And crushed and fear-stricken. Crushed means suppressed. And as a result of that, fear-stricken. For example, in some homes, the children live in a crushed and fear-stricken atmosphere. The parents are very adamant and very traditional, orthodox. So the children live in fear and the children live in a crushed and fear-stricken atmosphere. Arable land. Arable means suitable land. The arable land uh, the arable land is held by landlords. Suitable lands, arable land for cultivation is held by landlords. They take always the good, the arable or useful or suitable land, and then useless and below standard or low, again useless land will be handed over to the poor peasants. They will not work day and night. Arable land will be taken by the landlords. Arable means useful and suitable. Irksome means annoying, troublesome. Very often we can see that parents find their children irksome with demands. Means the children will be asking, do this, do that, give me this, give me that, purchase that, I'll take this and so on. So the all too much pestering. The other day we had that word pestering. So if you are pestering your parents, that will be irksome for them. Irksome for them. I think that all the words are explained and clear this for you. So enrolled means on the way, impart means give, harbor means to protect, advocates means supporters, adult means coming, briefly means give information, chided means speak angry words, crushed and fear-stricken means suppressed and therefore they are fear. And they live in an atmosphere of fear. Arable land means suitable land, and irksome means troublesome, purposeful. Okay. Now today's main points you can see. Gandhiji goes to Muzaffarpur to obtain more information. Welcomed by J.B. Kripalani at the station. Stays with Professor Malkani for 2 days. So Professor Malkani harbored Gandhiji and his friends. Gandhiji collects information from peasant groups, lawyers and others. Germany developed synthetic indigo and so natural indigo lost demand. The landlords forced the peasants to drop the sharecropping arrangement and pay compensation to them. When the news about the synthetic indigo reached the poor peasants, they demanded their money back. So these are the points here, and questions of course at the end we will answer. Now I will read the lesson for you so that you can follow. Gandhiji decided to go first to Muzaffarpur, which was en route on the way to Champaran, to obtain more information about conditions than Shukla was capable of imparting. Imparting means giving. Afterwards, Shukla is an illiterate peasant. He informed Gandhiji about the situation, but he wanted more information from, say, educated people and literate people. And so he said, before directly going to Champaran, we will go to Muzaffarpur. He accordingly sent a telegram to J.B. Kripalani of Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had seen at Tagore's Shantiniketan school. So he had some idea about J.B. Kripalani. He was an educated person. He was a professor in the Arts College in Muzaffarpur. So he sent an advance telegram saying that we are coming. The train arrived at midnight, 15th April 1970. Kripalani was waiting at the station with a large body of students. So to receive him, welcome him. Gandhiji stayed. Body of students means large number of students. Gandhiji stayed there for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani, a teacher in government school. So Professor Malkani was a government servant, but still what he did was, it was dangerous or risky for government servants to support home rule. But here, Professor Malkani, he was so courageous enough to support home rule as well as all those people who were supporting home rule. Because he is a government man, and government man should not go against the wishes of the government. But government there means British government. But here, he doesn't bother about that. He is so courageous that he has thrown himself into this struggle. That way we must understand that. It was an extraordinary thing, but harboring a person who is leading the struggle for independence, asking the Britishers to get out of this place, it was an extraordinary for a person like a government servant like Professor Malkani to harbor or to give a shelter or accommodation to Mahatma Gandhi, because Gandhiji, according to the Britishers, they were fighting against the Britishers. And here is a government servant, he is supporting him. So he said that it was extraordinary, he says. Gandhiji stated it was extraordinary thing in those days. Gandhiji commended for a government professor to harbor a man like me. A man like me means that not that he was anything bad, but he was leading the struggle for independence. So he said, if the government comes to know that Professor Malkani has supported me or given me accommodation in his house, definitely that itself is anti-national then, according to the Britishers. But still, he did not bother about that. In smaller localities, the Indians were afraid to show sympathy for advocates of home rule. Advocates means supporters. Gandhiji is an advocate of home rule. Gandhiji is a supporter of home rule. So, Professor Malkani is showing sympathy and supporting. That is very dangerous and risky as far as he was concerned those days. The news of Gandhi's advent is coming. The news of Gandhiji's advent and the nature of his mission. What is the nature of his mission? It is a mission of liberation. It is a journey that he undertook for liberating the poor sharecroppers from the sharecropping arrangement which was in favor of the landlords. So this is a kind of independence. His mission spread quickly through Muzaffarpur and Champaran. So people heard that here is our liberator, the man who is going to liberate us from all these problems, the man who is supporting home rule, the man who is going in the near future at least throw the British out, and we will have our own government at the center. That is home rule came from far and near they came. And sharecroppers from Champaran began arriving on foot, walking, and by conveyance to see their champion. Muzaffarpur lawyers called on Gandhi to brief him. They frequently represented peasant groups. In courts, they told him about their cases and reported the size of their fee. So the lawyers also did. Lawyers said that the situation is very bad here. And many of these sharecroppers, they come to us to take their case to the court. And we used to do that. We used to collect a sizable amount as fees also. And then Gandhiji was not very happy about that. Gandhiji chided the lawyers. Chided means he was angry. He used angry words. Chided the lawyers for collecting big fee from the sharecroppers. He said, I have come to the conclusion that we should stop going to the courts. Taking such cases to the courts does little good. So he said, you should not take fees like this. Another thing is that it is useless to go to courts. What is the use of going to the courts? Well, this is, of course, the court will be always standing in favor of the landlord. So there is no point at all. Most of the arable land, suitable land for cultivation in Champaran districts was divided into large estates owned by Englishmen. Englishmen, see, they are fighting against Englishmen in Indian courts, impossible. And worked by Indian tenants. So the land was divided into estates, and these estates were owned by Englishmen. Then the work has to be done by the tenants. Tenants means they don't have any right to their property, but they are just taking it on rent. That was the condition. So it's a kind of English zamindari. There is English landlords there. The chief commercial crop was indigo. Commercial crop means a crop that can be sold in the market for money or exported. All the crops can be, but indigo you cannot eat. That's only for selling in the market for industrial use. Commercial crops are used. They are used only for industrial purposes. So indigo is in the industrial purpose commercial product. The landlords compelled all tenants to plant 3/20 or 15% of their holdings, their land, with Indigo, and surrender the entire Indigo harvest as rent. So suppose you have got it says the 15, the landlords compel the tenants to plant 3/20 or 15% of their hold. Suppose there's 100 cents, then 15 cents the peasant should plant Indigo. The other part, of course, you can have wheat and other things like that. That you can do. Of course, you have to hand over the thing to them. You have to decide they are only tenants. They are not holders, they are tenants. Then 15% of the land, they compel them to plant Indigo. And at the end, when the Indigo is ready for harvesting, you have to hand over the whole thing to them. Not even a gram can be taken by the farmer. The tenant has to inherit. This is called a sharecropping arrangement. Sharecropping means the whole thing, not part of it, the whole thing they have to hand over because it has got industrial use and can be exported and they get plenty of money on this thing. Imagine all the 15% of what they cultivate has to be handed over. This was done by a long-term contract, 99 years or 1,000 years. That will be a long-term contract, an agreement. Then what happened presently, landlords learned that Germany had developed synthetic Indigo. And these landlords were Englishmen. They are getting news from abroad. So they got a news that natural Indigo is no more required because Germany had already developed synthetic Indigo, which is according in the market. You can easily purchase at a very low cost. Natural Indigo you have to cultivate, then you have to spend money on that, you have to harvest, you have to process it, and you have to send it. It's very costly. The market it is very costly. But here, synthetic Indigo you can do it in a laboratory. So you can also produce large quantities. Therefore, the market for Indigo went down. So these people were illiterate peasants, they did not know any such thing. So these literate Englishmen who owned all the arable lands or who were suppressing these people, and the poor peasants, they were living in an atmosphere of fear. They crushed by these people and also fear-stricken. But one fine morning, the English people called all these poor peasants and said, now we don't want this sharecropping arrangement, this we are going to stop. We don't want your crop at all, the whole thing you can take back. But you have to give compensation to us. And the compensation is fixed by whom? By the Englishmen. So to the poor tenants they said, all right, each one of you, no more agreements. Because what is the use of agreement? The Indigo is produced synthetically. So then it is useless. It's of no value. So they said, indirectly they said, now you take all those things, but you give us compensation, some money for that. Instead of that, you should give money. And the compensation will be fixed by us. You have to pay that if you want to continue on these farms. See that what kind of injustice was actually done to these people. Then he said, presently, the landlords learned that Germany had developed synthetic Indigo. They thereupon obtained agreement from the sharecroppers. Obtained means got agreement from the sharecroppers to pay them compensation for being released from, making them free, released from the 15% agreement. So you see, now we don't want this agreement. It's a very long time now. So we'll put a stop to this agreement. It's okay, we'll cancel this. But instead, you have to pay compensation. The sharecropping arrangement was irksome. Irksome means troublesome. So to say, to the peasants also. And many signed willingly. Then they thought, oh, it is a blessing in disguise. Oh, the Englishmen so generous. They have released us from this long-term agreement. Oh, they signed. Come on, bring all to me. I will sign. Say, because it is troublesome. Those who resisted. Some people said, no, I will not do that. They resisted. engaged lawyers. So some peasants said, we don't do that, let this continue like this. Then so they took the case to the law courts, engaged lawyers. The landlords hired thugs. Thugs means, you know, these days quotation people, you have heard of quotation like that. Criminals, gang of criminals. Suppose a person doesn't agree to this, then they will send, the landlords will send a gang, a group of criminals to their house and then set fire to their house, or take away their children and also beat, and even they won't mind, they wouldn't mind even to kill the farmer. So that is such a situation. So the law-abiding persons, they engaged lawyers, but and these people, what they did, they hired gundas, so to say, gunda people. Meanwhile, the information about synthetic indigo reached the illiterate persons also. Second stage, the information that Germany has developed a synthetic indigo and natural indigo has no value in the market. It has no market. And then this news came to the illiterate people also. And what did they do? Synthetic indigo reached the peasants who had signed and they wanted their money back. They had, beginning they thought it's a blessing. So they signed, they agreed to pay compensation. Already they paid. Now they understood that it was a big mistake, because the landlords, what they have done is that to protect them, they released this agreement, they made them free of this agreement, and in advance they took all the money. Now the peasants also came to know that the indigo is a useless thing, natural indigo has no value, and so those peasants who came to know this, they went to the landlords and said, "Come on, give us our money, the money that you have taken as compensation, you should give. If you don't give, we will either go to court or we will start agitation." At this time, when the peasants were so much worried, when the peasants were harassed, when the peasants, they had suffered a huge loss in terms of money by paying compensation, and they were demanding the repayment, and the landlords resisting. They are hiring gundas to beat them. Such a situation. The situation is a high voltage crisis, you can say. This has reached the boiling point. At that time, Gandhiji says, at this point, Gandhiji arrived at Champaran. This is a beautiful, very dramatic way of Gandhiji's appearance. When you see, throughout you find is the Indian farmers, they are exploited by the landlords. In this case, it is by the English landlords. You get that? You got that point now. Now you see the highlights is that Gandhiji goes to Muzaffarpur to obtain more information. We know that Gandhiji was given accommodation by Professor Malkani, and that of course is an extraordinary event, because Professor Malkani is an Indian working in the English run school, but still he supported these home rule people. That was at his own risk. That's why Gandhiji said it is an extraordinary thing. So question number one, why does Gandhiji say that Professor Malkani's action is an extraordinary one? Because Professor Malkani's action is an extraordinary one because those days it will be dangerous or risky for people, government servants to support home rule people. And Gandhiji was a person who was standing for fighting for home rule. So giving accommodation to Gandhiji and his retinue or his followers in Malkani's home was really an extraordinary thing. Question number one. Now continue. Welcomed by J.B. Kripalani at the station, stays with the Professor Malkani for 2 days. So we know Professor Malkani's action was really something extraordinary because Malkani was a government servant, paid by the English, and Gandhiji was fighting for home rule, and that would be even a person who shows sympathy towards supporters of home rule will be, they are at risk. But here it's not only showing sympathy, but actively he comes forward to support Gandhiji and his followers. Then Gandhiji collects information from peasant groups, lawyers and others. So Gandhiji went to Muzaffarpur and he met, when people came to know, why did people rush to Muzaffarpur? Second question. Why? Because when people came to know that Gandhiji had come there, advent of Gandhiji, peasants on foot, conveyance, and groups of lawyers went to meet him to brief him or give him all possible information about the poor, the sufferings and the misery of the sharecroppers of Chambara. So why did all the people come there? That is the answer to that. Continuing, Gandhiji collects information, etc. Germany developed synthetic indigo and so natural indigo lost demand. Why did the landlords release the peasants of the sharecroppers long-term agreement? That is a very interesting thing because the Englishmen who own this land, there was an agreement, long-term agreement, that 15% of the land should be cultivated with indigo, and when harvested, the entire crop should be handed over to them. At that time, natural indigo was very costly in the market. But soon they came to know that in Germany, they developed synthetic indigo, and synthetic indigo is cheaper. And therefore, by hiding this information, they called all the peasants and said, see, for the last many years this arrangement was going on, now we will shun it, or we will just, we are willing to release you of this. And the poor peasants thought, oh, this is a kind of irksome or a troublesome agreement. Most of them signed willingly. And then they put a clause that instead of this, instead of giving us crop, you should take compensation for us. And they collected money from them. Some understand that. So that is what he says. Germany developed the impact of that. What was the impact? Another question can be asked. What is the impact of Germany developing synthetic indigo in India? This is the impact. The illiterate poor peasants were made to sign and release themselves of this sharecropping arrangement and pay money, pay compensation as money in the form of currency rather than Indian rupee, rather than Indian rupee should be like that. No? So instead of compensation, instead of giving this crop, that is the impact. And then the landlords freed the peasants to drop forced the peasants to drop the sharecropping arrangement and make compensation to them. Already I have told you the answer, but once again I will repeat. Landlords came to know that synthetic indigo is cheaper in the market, and Germany had already developed. So they found that natural indigo is a useless thing, and therefore they asked the peasants of Chambara to sign and get themselves released from this sharecropping arrangement. Instead of that, they should pay compensation by way of money. That is. So that is because they found that it was useless. Sharecropping arrangement. When the news about the synthetic indigo reached the poor peasants, they demanded their money back. So when the news about this, what happened, about the synthetic indigo reached the peasants, they told them, what you have done is cheating us now. You were hiding information from us, so you collected money, come and give back. So pay back their money. So they were demanding, pay back, Inkilab, Zindabad, pay back, pay back, pay back. At that time, Gandhiji arrived. So that is it. Clear? So you have all the words, you have name. Here today the main point is how the English landlords cheated the Indian tenants. They were hiding that information. And then, as good Samaritans, they appeared before them. They said, oh, this long-standing agreement we will cancel. Instead, you will take all the crop and you give us money for peasants. For compensation. 90% of the peasants, this agreement was a troublesome thing. So they signed willingly. But some of them did not. They went to court. So that is the situation. So today's the main point is Gandhiji, instead of going direct to Champaran, he goes to Muzaffarpur. He had a link there, that is J.B. Kripalani. J.B. Kripalani welcomed him at the station. There also was a huge number of students of J.B. Kripalani, and they were taken to Professor Malkani's home. He harbored them or gave them accommodation. In one way, Malkani's action was an extraordinary thing those days, because Malkani was a government servant and Gandhiji was a supporter or leading figure demanding home rule. Those days, even showing sympathy to his supporters of home rule would be risky, but still he didn't bother about that. When people came to know that Gandhiji had come there, their liberator had come there, people from far and near on foot by conveyance came there to meet Gandhiji, and the lawyers also came. The lawyers told that we used to take their cases to the court and charge money, and Gandhiji chided them. Gandhiji said, don't do this. His opinion was that there is no use in taking this to the court, because poor peasants, what are they doing? They are living in a suppressed and crushed and fear-stricken atmosphere. So what is the use of taking these people, this to the law court? What they have to do is to liberate them from their fear. That's the most important thing. The fear complex should go away from them. That is what he said. Then he said that, and then they came to know what is the problem. The problem was that the landlords were, there was a long-term agreement. According to the agreement, 15% of the cultivated, the land should be cultivated. Land, of course, cultivated by the tenants, but 15% of the land should be cultivated, and that should be indigo cultivation should be there. And at the end of when the harvest is done, the entire indigo should be handed over to the landlords. When the landlords came to know that indigo, natural indigo is cheap, and now the synthetic indigo is cheap and natural indigo is costly. It has no market, because Germany had already developed this synthetic indigo. They, hiding this information, they convened a meeting of all the peasants, and they said, as if to help them, to pretending that they are going to help them, and said, we are going to release you of this agreement, which is a long-standing one. Instead of this giving us crop, you give us only the payment in cash. You give us in cash, pay compensation as by way of cash, they said, and most of them agreed, because this agreement was a very irksome one, very complicated and troublesome. Some of them did not. They went to court, and to suppress them, the landlords hired gunda groups, and later on, the illiterate people also came to know of the situation, that the reality, the stark reality dawned on them. What is that? That the synthetic is very cheap and this has no market. Then they understood that they were cheating these poor people. So the poor people in large numbers organized, not organized, they came together. There's nobody to organize them now. So they came together and demanded what they paid. They said compensation should be paid back to us. And they were demanding, agitating. At that time, Gandhiji came to take as a leader, because he was well known throughout India as the person who was leading the struggle for independence, the struggle for home rule. So this is the situation today. Hope that you are enjoying my classes. Bye. Have a nice time. Enjoy your life. Be thrilled by this. Let us be thrilled by this agitation for injustice. So to do away with injustice, to do away with the suppression, to do away with the crushing and the fear-stricken atmosphere, to do away with the freedom, to not do away with freedom, but for support, for freedom, for liberation of the poor peasants in Champaran. So that should really it should send what we must say now, that shockwaves through our spinal cord, to know how miserable was the life of the people, the peasants, the poor people who were working as tenants under the English landlords in 1917 and those even before that. So Gandhiji comes as a great liberator. Let us at least now, although it is 1970, we can join him now. Thinking of those days, no? We can go back and then we can see, you can feel a kind of thrill, for supporting the agitation of these people. Injustice, we must fight back. Bye. Have a nice day.